I can't hear you, Sangamita. You have to unmute yourself just for a moment.
Yes, the recording has started.
Thank you so much. So the three of us would like to give a little overview about the teachings which we want to share with you over this coming month. And so traditionally, the Noble Eightfold Path is often only the nuns gonna be not muted, hopefully. Okay, so the Noble Eightfold Path is traditionally often depicted as consisting of three trainings: sila or ethics, samadhi or collectedness of mind, and wisdom, panya. And you know, those, they are not like separate parts, but you can understand the Noble Eightfold Path like a cable, you know, which consists of 8 strands which are intertwined with each other, and because of this being intertwined, it becomes a very strong cable. But we need to speak about it in some kind of order, because in the world where we are, we have to kind of start with 1, then we go to 2 and to 3. So we're going to do that, but it doesn't mean, you know, that you start really like that, because it's a complex system which is working together. And it's, most of all, also it's really a matter of practice. So, you know, you can receive some information by hearing us speak, but then, you know, through acting on this in your life, and also through investigating in the meditation and paying real attention to detail, we start to kind of experience some of those things we hear. We experience them in our own lives, in our own bodies and minds. And then through that experiential understanding, you know, we make it our own. It becomes knowledge. And then, you know, if we start to enact it and align our lives accordingly, it becomes an intuitive understanding. It becomes part of our being. You know, that is how the path unfolds. You know, we start with just hearing something, and then it rings true to us, because there's somehow, we know it has met something we already kind of knew, but we never were conscious of it. So then we start, you know, really acting on it, and slowly but surely it becomes part of our way how we respond to life. And then, you know, that anchoring of the teaching in our own being, you know, becomes stronger and stronger, and our life opens up. And I'd like to share with you um, a few lines from the suttas from the Samyutta Nikaya, how the Noble Eightfold Path is spoken about in this book, because I think it's very, very beautiful. So the Buddha explains, you know, about the Noble Eightfold Path, that he hasn't invented the Noble Eightfold Path, but he has rediscovered it. It was, you know, taught by the Buddhas before him, and then it got lost. But then when the Buddha came, you know, 2,600 years or so ago, he rediscovered this ancient path, and, you know, shares it with us, and we can also use that path. So he says, suppose, monastics, a person wandering through a forest would see an ancient path, an ancient road traveled upon by people in the past. He would follow it and would see an ancient city, an ancient capital that had been inhabited by people in the past, with parks, groves, ponds, and ramparts, a delightful place. Then that person would inform the king or a royal minister, saying, Sire, know that while wandering through the forest I saw an ancient path, an ancient road traveled upon by people in the past. I followed it and saw an ancient city, an ancient capital that had been inhabited by people in the past, with parks, groves, ponds and ramparts, a delightful place. renovated city, sire. Then the king or the royal minister would renovate the city, and some time later that city would become successful and prosperous, well populated, filled with people, attain to growth and expansion. So do monastics. I saw the ancient path, the ancient road traveled by the perfectly enlightened ones of the past. And what is that ancient path, that ancient road? It is just this Noble Eightfold Path, that is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. I followed that path, and by doing so, I have directly known aging and death, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation. So I think this is a very beautiful way of speaking about what the Noble Eightfold Path is. It's a template, which lays out for us a way how we can think about how reality works. And right view is the first component of the Noble Eightfold Path, and it was said here in the reading. The Four Noble Truths are the expression of right view, and this is a supermundane expression of right view, leading to increasing transcendence of old age, sickness, and death, or of unsatisfactoriness. And there is also a mundane component to this, which is deeply knowing that all actions by body, speech, and mind have consequences, and death is not the end of life, but death is just the opposite of birth. So this is, in a nutshell, what right view is: mundane and supermundane right view. So that's the first of the 8 components, and it's called, in Pali, it's called Samadhi. And the word Sama can be translated in many different ways. Often it's translated as right, but it can also be translated as skillful, wholesome, wise, healthy, proper, best. And it's the opposite of Miccha Ditti. Miccha is wrong view, unwholesome, unhealthy, unwise. And and the term of wholesome, it can be seen, and it's not a compromise, but it's a result of seeing clearly. And it's often in the suttas, it's compared with, for example, a musician, who has a lute, and then the lute, string of the lute is tuned just in the right way. It's not too tense and it's not too loose, and therefore it sounds perfectly. So, it speaks of like of a constant kind of attunement. Checking what is appropriate in this circumstance might not be appropriate in another. So that's what right view is all about. And, the mundane right view leads us to worldly happiness, and the supermundane right view leads us to ultimate freedom. And then the second component is right understanding, or wise intention, wise thought. And the Buddha speaks about 3 kinds of thought which comprise this. Sorry, not compromise. First one is thought free of lust, which is can also be expressed as renunciation and generosity. Second one is thought free of ill will, which is non-ill will or loving kindness and metta, the 4 Brahma Viharas. And then thought free of harm and cruelty, harmlessness, compassion. So that's the first 2 components of the path. And I hand over now to Ahimsa, who speaks about the next few components. Okay.
So sort of the next chunk, the next group is the ethical component of the path, the third and the fourth and the fifth. Right speech or attuned speech, or wise speech, right action, and right livelihood. And this group of the path encompasses the 5 moral precepts that the Buddha gave based on his Night of Enlightenment and his understanding of the moral fabric of the cosmos. And again, the whole point of the path is to bring us to really understanding things as they are. And my mind just went completely blank. So understanding things as they completely are, as they really are. And the moral aspect of the path is a crucial aspect of that. And it is, just like Aya Sandachita was saying, it's not about being a good person, a good boy or a good girl. It's about being in alignment, being congruent with reality. And it's not about obeying. It's about true inner peace and happiness. So the component of right speech has a broader expanse than just the 4th precept of right speech in the 5 precepts. When the Buddha was giving a discourse where he said to the listeners, I will teach and then I will analyze the Eightfold Noble Path. He defines very specifically all of the limbs of the Eightfold Noble Path, and that's in the Samyutta Nikaya 45, the 8th sutta. And he explains that right speech is actually got 4 components when it's a path factor. It's the 4th precept of Musavada, not speaking falsely, but then it's also to not be divisive in your speech, and to not be harsh in your speech, and to not just be nonsensical, blathering on and on. The Pali word for that is sampapalapa. It's a great word. Sampapalapa is idle speech. It's a onomatopoeia, really, a word that sounds like what it's trying to describe. So that's the right speech component of the path. The right action component, again, in this sutta, the Buddha is outlining, explaining what right action is. It's the first 3 precepts of the 5 precepts: to not harm, to not kill any living being, to not steal, to not take that which is not given, and to not misuse your sexual energy. Which really, the 3rd precept is almost the two first precepts in the area of sexual energy. It's to not harm and to not take with your sexual energy. And then again in the sutta, the 5th component of the the 5th limb of the path, the 3rd component of the ethical chunk, the ethical division, is right livelihood. And unfortunately in this sutta, well, I don't know if I should say unfortunate, but in this sutta, it something that happens for me a lot in the suttas you're reading, it's like, now I will define right livelihood. It is giving up wrong livelihood. That is right livelihood. It's like, anyway, there are other suttas that again talk about right livelihood. It is, again, all of the language in this division of the path is about not. It's about abstinence. It's about refraining. And livelihood is the same. It's to not have, and you get this from other suttas where the Buddha is talking about livelihood. It's to not, acquire your wealth, acquire your sustenance through any illegal means or through any anything to do with violence, anything to do with deceit, and anything that's causing harm. And I do think it's interesting that the when you look at the Noble Eightfold Path and you look at the ethical division of the Noble Eightfold Path, it is language that's very much about abstinence. It's about not doing this, not doing this, not doing this. And I think that that's because this is the the entry point, and it's something that then needs to be cultivated. And there is a sequence with the Buddha always. He's always just giving us step by step. This is how you do it. And one of the greatest teachings of the Buddha, where you can actually kind of capsulize the essence of the teaching, is to refrain, to abstain from all evil and to cultivate the good and to purify the mind. This is the teaching of all Buddhas. That's in the Dhammapada, verse 183. And I think you get that sense when you look at the ethical component of the Noble Eightfold Path, this idea of abstaining. But then there's the next step in that sequence is to cultivate the good, and then finally to purify the mind. And again, just this idea that it's not about being a good person, it's really about becoming congruent and becoming in alignment with reality, and that eventually involves purifying the mind. And that is what the path is about. The path is about final liberation. It's about total transformation. And it begins with refraining from that which is evil, but it definitely moves to then cultivating the good and then eventually purifying the mind. There's an amazing sutta I'll end with, just showing that is the whole point of the Noble Eightfold Path, and that the ethical part of it is foundational. It's absolutely essential. At one point, a monk goes to the Buddha in Samyutta Nikaya 47, the third sutta, and asks the Buddha, could you just give me the teachings in brief? And the Buddha says to the monk, first establish yourself in the starting point of wholesome states, that is, in purifying the mind, the moral discipline, and in right view. Then, when your moral discipline is purified and your view is straight, then you should practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which leads to the final section of the Noble Eightfold Path.
And do you want to cite? Okay.
Oh, yeah, Samyutta 47, verse 3. Can I read a poem really, really fast?
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, okay. Just to make it a little bit less dry. I mean, not that that's dry. It's awesome. We're talking about purifying the mind. It's great. But just the path. This book is the first Free Women. I'm sure that Sanghamitta's shared it with many of you. It's an absolutely very, very, very alive, inspiring translation, current of the Therigatha, the poems of the early nuns, by a beautiful practitioner named Maddie Weingass. So this is a very short poem, but it's very inspiring about the path. Another Tisa. Find your true home on the path. Find the path right here in the center of your own heart. If you keep searching in the past and searching in the future, you will search and search, but your searching will never end.
Okay, so that brings us to the third section, the Samadhi section of the path factors, which is the last 3 factors. And Samadhi, this is the mind unified in the present moment. So the last three factors are a part of the process of getting to that unified, clear, present moment awareness and integration. So we have right effort, we have right mindfulness, and we have right concentration. And the aim of these factors, as Ahimsa was saying, is to purify the mind, purify the heart, and to abide there. And then we use that steady, non-scattered mind to look at the way things are, as Sanchita was saying. And that's to understand it deeply and actually move to liberation. So this path has lots and lots of benefits along the way, but the path is designed for liberation. Let's see, the right effort, the right mindfulness, the right concentration, they all work together. And there's a commentary simile that shows how these work together. And the story in the simile is that there are these three young boys going to a park, and they see a tree that has these flowers in the branches they want to collect, but none of them is tall enough to reach the flowers. So one of the boys gets down on his hands and knees to kind of make a table so the tallest boy can stand on the back. But when he gets up on the table, the boy's back, he's too wobbly, and he can't focus enough to reach for the flowers. So the second boy stands next to him, and he's able to put his, he's standing on one, put his hand on the shoulder of the other, and then he can reach up and focus and collect the flowers. So in the simile, that base, the foundation is your right effort. So that's giving you the foundation, but the steadiness is coming from right mindfulness. And then only then can right concentration really unify and reach and become one-pointed. It's with the support of right mindfulness and right effort. But right effort does not exist without the support of the factors that came before. So you can see, as Ayasantachita was saying, how it all comes together to create something strong enough that we have a path for liberation. So the 5 previous factors support right effort. And right effort is about abandoning the unwholesome and cultivating the wholesome. We heard about that in the right view component, and then in the sila components, the ethical conduct. So how do you go about understanding and abandoning unwholesome, understanding and cultivating wholesome? For me, ask often. I ask myself, and I offer this to you, ask yourself often, how do I know this is wholesome? How do I know this is unwholesome? And when you can really answer those questions, then you've got right view. And then if you've got that right view, you're going to want to align with the wholesome. And as you align with the wholesome, that's your right intention. Then once you know this and you're aligned with it, then to enact it, you have the sila section, where your ethics of speech, of your actions, of your livelihood, those are aligned with what is wholesome. So these are the factors that support right effort. And then in turn, right effort, along with right mindfulness and right view, run and circle around those 5 previous factors. And they're helping to bring them to purity, as Ahimsa was saying. The sutta that we've studied fairly recently on that is the Majjhima Nikaya 117, the middle length discourse is 117, the Great 40. In that one, it gets to the last of the factors, but in the form of noble right concentration. And that's explained as the unification of mind with the previous 7 path factors as support. So as Ayasanta was saying at the beginning, it all comes together, and you get to this right noble concentration with all of these being purified. The other 2 factors of the Samadhi section of the path, accompanied by right view. So right concentration is supported by the right effort, the right mindfulness, and then the earlier path factor, right view. So these 3, they're as follows. So for effort, right view we already talked about. So for effort, one makes an effort to abandon wrong view, wrong thought, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood. And one enters upon right view, right thought, right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And this is right effort. And then for mindfulness, mindfully one abandons wrong view, wrong thought, wrong speech, wrong action, and wrong livelihood. And one enters upon and abides in right view, right thought, right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And this is right mindfulness. So this Samadhi grouping, the practice of Samadhi, it clears away the distortions of the mind so that we can recognize the mind that's free of disturbance. And the 3 sections of the path, as I think you're seeing here, they support each other, and they're creating the conditions for liberation, which is, I think, in the early question when Santachita asked, what is the path for? You could have come up with lots and lots of very valid and good reasons for the path, but hopefully in that list you included liberation.
Thank you. So I'd also like to share a poem which relates to the path, and then afterwards we have some 10 minutes or so for questions or comments from you. And this poem is by Bhikkhuni Bhadra, which means lucky. You always considered yourself lucky because things seemed to work out the way you wanted. Now luck has a different meaning. Lucky to be walking a path that finds peace in the arising and passing away of each present moment, regardless of how things work out or don't. So that speaks to that, it doesn't mean that we won't have any difficulties arising in our lives, but we have a very clear foundation from which to relate to those difficulties. Really fully participating in life and developing this resilience through opening. And we don't have to do it, without support. We do it on the Noble Eightfold Path, which is all about, supporting us to open ourselves to our experience in a way which leads to liberation. So, Sangamita, maybe you can stop the recording now and then unmute everyone, or maybe give people opportunity to ask some questions or make some comments.
Handamayang Dhammakataya Sadhukaram Dharamase. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
So I think, maybe Sangamita,